Hey, what's up, everybody? My name is Will. I'm a VC in the space on my third fund. I am an investor in Wire Network. I've jumped in, not only do I invest money, but I invest my time. So I've jumped in full time as the COO of Wire Network. I'm on my third fund, so I've deployed lots of money into a bunch of different people and teams in this space. And regulatory is always the zillion-dollar question. So before we get started, I actually would love the three of you just to do quick intros so people understand kind of who's up here.
Sure. My name is Nuno Malecki. I've been a crypto lawyer in this space since 2017, full time, representing everyone from layer ones to dApps, third party staking services, and everything in between. I work at Day One Law. We handle everything from corporate structuring, regulatory strategy to token launch and beyond. Yeah.
Hey everyone, my name is Tufik. I'm the managing partner of Renault & Co. Started off in crypto in 2014, became a lawyer in crypto in 2017. And we have a firm that works on all aspects of digital asset, and we're just trying to use legal services to advance the adoption of blockchains.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. My name is Carlos Duque. I'm the Chief Legal Officer and General Counsel at Wire Network. You heard from our CEO, Ken, a little bit ago. I've been doing corporate securities law forever. I'm old, and I've been in blockchain since about 2020, and it's a blast. So I'm trying to keep everyone out of trouble.
Duque is how you say it?
Duque.
I've been afraid to ask you for a while, to be honest with you.
Like El Duque.
I've known you for years. I've never asked that question.
El Duque in the house. All right, so I got a whole list of questions, but the way these things usually go, we start with the first one and it goes wherever. But I personally have been so confused about regulatory in the space, right? Regulatory DeFi is kind of what people listening to this conversation are into. So let's just start with what are the pain points in the regulatory space right now? Like, how are you? Let's frame the conversation.
All right, so I'm just going to set it up for my boys here to take it down. Because for those of you who are not familiar with, believe it or not, to this day, we still, at least in the United States, still regulate digital assets based on the Securities Act of 1933, the Securities and Exchange Act of 1934. It's in the name, folks. 33, 34, Howey test, 1946 about oranges. Okay? This is still the pervasive and dominant legal structure that governs digital assets today. That's like using horse and buggy law to govern a commercial jet. People are like, what's wrong with it? I don't know. What's right with it? Where do you start? So that's my headliner, and I pass it to my colleagues.
Yeah, I mean, I really don't want to talk too much about the past because the past is the past, and we're actually coming into a huge opportunity in the future. And I think this opportunity here allows us to shape the conversation about how we want to be able to interact with laws and regulations and how we want to actually use those incentive models, which regulations are effectively that, to power ourselves, right? And I think one key example for us to kind of put into context is, the Bill Hyman, stated and had a doctrine called the Hyman Doctrine, which came out he had a speech in 2018 and he came out with the doctrine in 2019. And effectively what it stated is that a token can break the fourth prong of Howey, right? Which is the efforts of others prong, if it had a sufficient amount of decentralization, right? And so the whole ecosystem from a legal perspective moved into looking at that construct of sufficient decentralization as a mechanism to break securities laws and not have securities law applied to tokens and the transactions that govern those token issuances. And what that has created is actually an extremely perverse outcome in our ecosystem, right? What's that perverse outcome? Is that in effect decentralization is triggered by efforts, right? It's a decentralization of efforts. But what's the problem with decentralization of efforts is that you can actually create a lot of opaqueness around the decentralization of efforts, right? And we've actually gone to great lengths to create structures to build around that opaqueness, right? And you could see this by the fact that, we've had certain projects that have actually had full decentralization of efforts, like Bitcoin, but many projects have actually failed to reach that threshold. And we came up with these random tests, like the Bahamas test, which basically said that you had to fuck off to the Bahamas, and if you did and your projects, survived, that was considered sufficient decentralization. But in reality, that created a whole host of other problems where you now had to kind of build this foundation, then had to attempt to decentralize based upon a community of efforts. And then you, as the project promoter and founder, had to kind of attempt to pull yourself out of it, right? Which, from a factual perspective, never freaking happens, right? And so right now, we are coalescing around a new test, an objective test for decentralization, which is control-based decentralization, right? And I think for us, having that type of control-based decentralization is a key part of the way in which the legislation that is coming through Congress and the key way in which the SEC is actually looking at rulemaking is going to be based upon. Now, what's control-based decentralization? Control-based decentralization basically breaks down to who is in political, economic, and operational control, right? So it's looking really, are you in control of the smart contracts that govern the AMM? Are you in control or have an ability to exercise control around the assets that are held in custody or in smart contract? And then you have, are you in control from a political standpoint or a governance standpoint? We concentrate so much on the governance standpoint, but really there's multiple layers of control-based decentralization that we can focus on.
Yeah, for sure.
Don't worry, I'll get in there. Don't you worry. Yeah, so Tufik. I'm so sorry about that. So he's right. There's this decentralization theater that everybody's playing, which is, hey, token holders govern this thing. Don't tell them that we own most of the tokens. And yeah, it wasn't me. That's right.
Oh, it's called the Shaggy Device.
That's right. And there's this very.
I literally say that to clients, by the way. I say your defense is called the Shaggy defense.
Yes, that's very true. And if it's done correctly, sure, you can probably get some kind of benefit from it, but nobody ever takes it far enough. That's the reality. So you have a lot of these projects out there that have not shifted risk, liability, or even mitigated any of it, and have these overly complicated structures that they're really not taking good advantage of. But you're right. We are already seeing a lot of legislators start to put forward all this new proposed legislation, like the market structure bill that we're currently looking at right now, and that's focusing on decentralization. And this idea, I mean, look, it's got legs and it needs some work, but it needs a lot of work. But like, you're clearly seeing regulators start to actually impose this concept of decentralization. I think that stems from one of the biggest pain points in DeFi, being that we're applying laws that are meant to be applied to intermediaries, right? We have a peer-to-peer system now. We don't need these intermediaries anymore. So those laws don't really apply. They don't really make sense. They were not designed for this kind of a system, yet we're still applying them. And now I think everybody's kind of waking up and saying, oh shit, this doesn't work. We need to fix this and change these laws, or at least create some exemptions, because why it might work for TradFi, it doesn't work for peer-to-peer systems.
So if we basically have two audiences, we have the startups that are trying to disrupt, bring in everything into this DeFi space that we know all the consumers want. And then we have TradFi that's trying to dabble into DeFi, right? And both are thinking about risk, both similarly and differently. Given the fact that the game has totally changed, right? This is like, to use your analogy, Carlos, this is the jet flying on when all the laws are around the bug and carry. How should those two parties, pick one or both, be approaching this besides hiring you all? Like how should those parties be thinking about this principally?
Yeah, so it's a good question. I'm not sure I have a great answer. To me, it would be, hey, if you want to get into Web3, you better think about it before you really get into it and understand, am I doing this for any real purpose that is going to be solved for? One of my favorite questions to ask clients is, I'm not used to ask them. I don't really ask them anymore because I already know the answers. Why a token? Why are you doing a token? What's the purpose of it? A good 70% of the time, if you press hard enough, the answer is to make money. And that's fine. I'll help you do that. But I don't think Web 2 going into Web 3 just to make money makes sense. You better be part of your ethos. It needs to make sense for you. Other than that, I don't think you're going to succeed.
and maybe to piggyback on that, because I think this is a really key point. In reality, us as an industry have failed one of the philosophical tenets of blockchain, which is we have not put forth decentralization as a key principle. We have lost it along the way, and we have now found folks that are selling us tokens within this guise of being without intermediaries, having no actual control, and all these philosophical principles that, animated the initial impetus for us to get into this technology, right? But they are really just becoming snake oil salesmen, and we have fallen to them. And unfortunately, I don't like to say this, but we needed regulation here to kick our ass a little bit and actually put forth the principles of decentralization. And I think the principles of decentralization need to be reinvigorated and need to be reintroduced into the ecosystem. And I think that principle in and of itself, because it's so hard, right? It's actually going to create a filtering effect from anyone who doesn't want to build important and, important projects in the space. And that filtering effect will take away a lot of the rubbish of folks claiming of a variety of claims and put the people who do believe in the technology and actually have now a economic and legal impotence to follow through on that belief. That's what I'm most excited about seeing. And on the TradFi guys, again, I think there just has been institutions, right, that are going to attempt to get into.
They've been dipping their toes.
Yeah, exactly.
One thing I do want to add to it, sorry,
We'll head it this out.
is just there is a world where TradFi exists in Web3, but it's not quite the Web3 that we know or the blockchain that we know. It's just tokenized securities. I think that's going to be a massive thing that's coming down the pipe and really unlocking a lot of the ways securities move in our market, and creating much quicker settlements. So I didn't mean to say that they don't mix, but to me that's still TradFi. You know what I mean? That's just tokenized TradFi.
So I want to echo some of that both these guys said, especially Tufik just now. And it's if you guys were at the panel upstairs from Mooch, Mooch is an interesting guy. He went to Harvard Law and had the good sense to never practice. So that's a G move. I appreciate that. And and then he shared, it was kind of the closing thought if you weren't there. I can't do it justice, but the essence of it was like, look, you have to create value. Okay, if you're building a project just to get rich on the basic delta of issuing a token, then that's not going to work. We're in this special. I'm the the CLO, like I said, at Wire, and so I've been at the firms for many years, and now I'm inside, and I have a slightly different view now because I got to get the deal done. You know what I mean? I got pressures that I didn't have before when I was at a firm, and I have a almost purely business view, and I think to the essence of it is that you have to do something good for society as part of your project. And Mooch said it not like socialist tree hugger kind of thing, but if you actually contribute value and leave people and the place better off than when you found it, the regulators are way less likely to come after you. I hate to get too philosophical, but again, those 33 Act, 34 Act, that followed the crash of 29, which was built on a whole bunch of fraud. So we're in this little kind of pause, if you will, where Trump's like, we're not going to enforce any of the old rules, and none of the new ones have been drafted yet. So this is once in a multiple generation opportunity to demonstrate to the world that we can regulate ourselves without a heavy-handed statutory scheme that's going to inhibit you left, right, and center. And we must take advantage of that by doing good.
That's a good segue to my next question, but you have a quick comment on that?
I was just going to say they're still going to be prosecuting fraud, so don't do that.
Oh,
Those rules still very much apply.
The anti-fraud is eternal.
Okay. So how has the Trump administration changed the game, right? The changes in the SEC. I got all these portfolio company founders and new deal flow coming to me saying, oh, we can do this now. We could do this thing now that we couldn't do before. Is that true or not true? Or how would you advise?
Yeah, I think it's a complicated question, but I'll try to break it down simply. So the laws have not really changed at all at the moment, right? You have no legislative changes and you have no case law changes. What you have is staff notices, which are interpretations of law, which the SEC comes out with. So that's the SEC. The main problem at all times for projects is not the SEC in and of itself, unless you're a multi-billion-dollar project. So it's really class action suits, right? Now, the SEC's interpretive guidelines can be persuasive on a court, right? And they can use it within the manner in which they opine on laws, but they can also decide not to. And I think given, the grifting around a lot of these staff notices, especially the meme coin one, which came out the first, which is a bit weird, giving the Trump coin and stuff like that. Like, I think there's going to be a reduction of the weight that, that folks are going to be putting on it. Having said that, the SEC is not enforcing, right? At least for,
Like,
bona fide.
what does that mean? What for the layman people?
So let's look at, I always say this, like, risk is like your sexuality. It's on a spectrum, right? So it's, in reality, you have kind of the bona fide fraud, and then you have...
I'm just straight up gay. You're...
And unlike that, like Impassioned Night and Mykonos, like, there's some clarity here, and it's not overly confusing for you. So I think the hard cut really is, do you have the intention to fraud, and can someone prove it, right? I think that's the hard line, right? Like, if you are acting in good faith, and good faith means that you're not being a douchebag, and you're acting in good faith, you're speaking to counsel, you're trying to do your best, you're not trying to be a total dick and, rug people and stuff like that. And not also, I see this in a lot of founders, they kind of like delude themselves into believing their bullshit. Like, so also
100%.
don't be delusional.
Be delusional and just crush it.
Just delusional, but just like, realize that reality may hit you in the face. And just like, that's what your ex-wife said too. And So, the fraud line is important. But before that, if you're acting in good faith and you're trying to do the right thing, I think there's a lot of reasons for you to be able to launch projects, potentially even in anticipation for what things are happening. Like, I was listening to Miles Jennings, who's the GC of A16Z Crypto, and he was stating that, they're considering advising clients to do token launches from the United States, right? Now, I think it's still a bit dangerous from a tax standpoint, right? But that's kind of the changes that we're experiencing right now. But from a technical reading of the law has not technically changed, right? And until we have, the market structure bill passed, which will probably be in the second session of Congress in the fall, then, we won't have anything. And, the SEC is going through rulemaking, but those are still interpretive in nature.
Still got a second? Okay.
Yeah. You've got 2 minutes, so go.
So Tawfiq is absolutely correct. We haven't actually had a shift in any real law yet. The staff statements, if you read carefully enough, interestingly enough, they're good interpretations. They kind of align with the way lawyers were already thinking about these things. Stable coins, meme coins, and stuff like that. You really need to read those very carefully because the SEC didn't say just all stable coins are not securities. So look, just call me. I'll give you free advice if you need that interpreted. But Tawfiq is absolutely correct. The plaintiff's bar will always be there. They will sue your ass. They don't give a shit. They want their money. I've mostly resigned to more of like a commercial lawyer at this point because I have my clients like, I'm not worried about the SEC anymore. I don't care. I'm in a YOLO. I'm like, all right, well, fine. But if you get a class action, I know someone for you.
And there's a bunch of cuck law firms out there that are just going to be taking these deals to make a pay, right? So like, with class actions, it's a lot of them are contingency based. So the barriers to actually do these lawsuits are quite low. And there's certain law firms that are trying to ambulance chase here. We got to be careful.
Exact one, not there. All right, Carlos, close this out, man.
Oh yeah, is this it for the panel?
This is it. This is what I'm told.
All right. Yeah, no, I agree with everything that everyone said. I lived in Hawaii for a minute and I surfed a lot. So it is where you are on the wave. Timing is critical in everything. And you have to like meet the puck where it's going, not where it is now. Everything they said is 100% correct. I agree with it. And if I look forward just a little bit, like go read like Annalisa Torres's opinion from the Southern District of New York. She's like 42 years old. And then the other guy whose name I'm blanking on, but who went to my school and gave my graduation speech, but is 82. What's his? CNY.
I can't.
Yeah. They had the same facts and they went up and totally opposite directions.
Oh yeah.
Right. You know what I'm talking about? And even though my fellow alumnus, he's completely wrong. And still, you're giving me 1960s, rules here. So even if the rules haven't changed as they're written, as the judges sitting on the federal bench are younger and a little more forward thinking, a little more tech savvy, so you don't feel like you're helping your grandpa connect the Xbox, then that is going to create more room for us to work and innovate. It's going to give those cuck law firms a little bit of pause before they bring in a shaky theory, because the judges aren't so firmly coming down on these anachronistic ancient interpretations of these statutes. So yeah, I mean, that's why I'm not a law firm, because I have a little less risk averse than law firm lawyers should be. There it is, the first of all.
Awesome. All right. Well, this has been great. Thanks, gentlemen. Appreciate it.
Thank you.